Hello everyone, welcome to another episode from Ampro Engineering. In this episode we are going to work on, what are you doing here? Not this car, sorry. I actually am working on that car, so you'll see it soon, but in this episode we're going to work on this car. This is, despite what it says on it, this is a Nikko Rhino. I don't know if it runs. It's got some, it's kind of crusty. And I've had a ton of requests on doing a review on our Nikko Rhino. Well, this is the Rhino that I have. It was sold in a number of different forms. In this case here, it was licensed by Sears in the United States. And it was sold as the Super Lobo, which is why you've got Die Hard, which is another Sears brand. But we'll dive into the variants of the Nikko Rhino coming up here. At this point, what I want to do is clean it up, see if it works, fix anything that may be broken, and then from there, we'll go ahead and do a full review video. So let's just take a look at it first. Now, this car came out in the early 1980s, and if you take a look at the rear suspension, you'll notice that this looks quite a lot like a Hornet or a Grasshopper, and that's because, well, yeah, it's basically exactly like a Grasshopper. It's got friction shocks and a non-floating pivoting rear transaxle. It even has a little bump stop like the Grasshopper did. The battery is placed right here. In fact, if you pull this, I think you pull that there down. What's happening here is we have a standard 7.2 volt battery, and then we have a 4-cell receiver pack. How this works is this battery pack will power the vehicle, and this battery pack will power the receiver. This was very common in the early 1980s, not on cars that are electronic with proportional electronic speed controls, which this car has. This was very common for cars that had mechanical speed controls where the propulsion power source and the receiver power source were separate. What's interesting about this car is it is in remarkable condition underneath. It strikes it very hard for me to believe that a child in the 1980s would receive this car and it would get basically this much use. There's a couple scratches. Oh! We have a broken pivot point, so that'll be interesting because the pivot pin, it's pressed on, so we're going to have to pound that guy out, so that'll be interesting. We do have a front suspension that is quite nice. Again, common for cars in the 1980s, where you have a pivot point in the front, so your suspension results in no camber gain. You are getting some bump steer here. The Rhino, I believe, had decals called frame buggy, and the reason for this is because there is actually a frame underneath it. I don't know how functional the frame is, but it certainly is a full frame that goes up to the rear wing. The rear wing appears to be removable from the underside. So what I think we should do is, well, that's off. Let's pull this frame off, and that'll give us access to the electronics. We can clean it all out. Frame is held in place by this screw. This screw, 2 screws at the rear, 1 here and 1 on the mirror side, and that is all. So those 4 screws give us all of this, which is very nice. Now this part of the car is looking more like yet another one of its variants, and that was the Radioshack Golden Arrow, probably one of the cars that blurred the line between entry-level and hobby-level RC cars. Oh wow, that was surprisingly easy. And look at that. What we're looking at here, and just to give you some basic understanding, okay, this is the exact same scale as a Grasshopper. Now normally Nikko is associated with quote-unquote toys, and those of you who watch this channel know that branding of this as a toy and this not as a toy drives me nuts. These are both toys, but this would normally be considered a more entry level versus a hobby level. Now, despite the fact that this one has a 540 motor and electronic proportional speed control with proportional steering, and the Grasshopper would have come with the 380 motor, a mechanical dumpster fire of a speed control. On top of that, you're going to see that the Grasshopper, despite the fact that this was normally a car that you would put together with all these screws, the Rhino would also have screws nearly everywhere. Now there are a couple of areas that don't. For example, this pin is a press fit coupler on both sides as well as in the front, and then the shock towers are also this way with these weird little capped screws. But overall, this car does definitely blur that line between your first RC car and one that you'd buy in a hobby shop. Another thing to note is that the tires are held on with a 7mm screw, so your trusty Tamiya tool will come of great use. Now, this is another really neat thing that we have here. Watch this. Does that look familiar? Front tires, same exact way. So it's a 5x11mm bushing. This means, of course, that we're going to upgrade the car to bearings. We'll pop off our little hub there. Now, despite the fact that this car was made by Nikko, it wasn't priced like a entry-level RC car would be today. This car, I suspect, costs significantly more than your entry-level Hornet. The main reason is the Hornet usually came as just the car, whereas this was RTR. So you had a wall charger, you had your battery pack, and you had your radio, and the car was in fact assembled. I do want to pull the trans and the motor just to get a little more access here. First thing we'll do is remove these pivot points. There are 2 screws there and 2 screws there, as well as 1 screw right here at the Nerf bar. Again, exactly like a Grasshopper or Hornet would be. So I have made a mistake. These little caps that I removed right here are not part of what holds the pivot pin in. I don't know what holds it in. I took that 1 screw. Oh, wait. Oh, they are. Excuse me. They come through the bottom. That's how they are. There we go. And then this additional piece here that we removed on top is what allows the door to pivot. Okay, I was a little confused for a moment. One area that I've just realized will be a problem is the shocks, since they don't really come off on either end. But this is off enough, I suppose. You could force this off because they are snapped on. But, you know, this car's old, and we don't need to put it through that kind of stress. So we'll pop the motor off. Motor is out, and notice the little sticker there that says RS 540. So this would be your standard 540 motor, which was the standard for everything from the 1970s to, well, today. As we can see, our pivot point is slightly ruined. There is a small bit of rubber here, which I suspect would dampen any kind of vibration or noise in here. We could go about gluing this, but this is a very brittle plastic, and I don't trust it. So most likely, we're just going to print one. The wing does come off with this 1 screw right here. Put pressure right here and push the wing right out. That's actually a very nice design. And there's the frame, and there's the wing. I'm going to wash all of this, and we'll be right back. All right, everything is washed and drying. So in the next episode, we will start to kind of take a look at things a little closer. Hopefully get this transmission open and put this thing back together. Thank you all so much for watching, and we will see you next time.